Hi guys, welcome back. This time around I'm bringing you the latest from ZIIGAAT, the Horizon. This is a 1 plus 2 plus 2, so a single DD, 2 BAs and 2 microplanars. The first such configuration from ZIIGAAT, by the way, and if I'm not mistaken, the third IEM that has crossed the $300 price point for ZIIGAAT. The other two are the Luna and the Arcanis. The Arcanis 399, if I'm not mistaken, the Luna 369, if memory serves me right, and now the Horizon at $329. I'm not going to bore you with the whole unboxing experience. I'm just going to quickly just touch up on the accessories, which includes the latest case that ZIIGAAT has been using, which is a nice case, better and more favorable actually than the original case that they used, which okay was more pocketable, but this one definitely has a little bit more space. As you can see, I've got basically everything inside there. Stock cable with exchangeable terminations, a good selection of tips. So it's a big enough case to take comfortably the IEM, and actually if you take away this tray inside, yeah, you might even be able to fit in a small dongle inside there and everything. Anyway, that's the case. I'm not going to bother you anymore with that. As for the IEM, this is not the stock cable, obviously. As for the IEM, nice focus, there we go. Nice looking shell, as is already customary with ZIIGAAT. So not anything that I can say negative about it. Fits beautifully my ears. I'm using the stock tips. It's got a very nice faceplate. Let's see if I can focus on that a little bit. Very nice faceplate. Not a lot of weight to it, as is always the case as well. The name of the actual IEM comes on the actual shell, which is something that I truly appreciate in a market where there's hundreds and hundreds of IEMs and some of them are so similar. This is actually a nice little detail that I really appreciate. Not many brands do this, so I appreciate this attention to detail. And that's it. Basically, in terms of its physical appearance, it ticks the right boxes for me, and I think it will do that for the majority as well. In terms of the build quality, again, I think it will please most people. Obviously, at $329, we are expecting already something a little bit more, in terms of overall IEM and everything. But when you consider that this is already priced at a value which is, let's say, Moonjob Blessing 3 territory, that kind of territory. It's not priced, let's say, out of context. I believe that's probably the benchmark that they kind of, or the Moonjob, the Dusk. I believe that's the kind of let's say price point or reference that they try to achieve. Internally, Knowles BAs, as is most of the times the case with ZIIGAAT, apparently it's got a newer generation dynamic driver with a bio, I believe it's a bio diaphragm. Let me actually just confirm so I don't mislead you guys. I don't like doing that, so let me just see. Yes, it's a biodynamic, it's a bio diaphragm. I don't know what they mean by biodynamic, but I believe it's a well, some sort of fancy material, or not fancy. They just as brands sometimes have to use these fancy names to make things a little bit more interesting. But it's biomaterials of some sort, and it's the latest generation of that. Two 10 millimeter in size, obviously. Two BAs for let's put it the meat and potatoes of the frequency range, which is the mids. I believe they are the 3262s, if I'm not mistaken, and then two microplanars. And this is a configuration that we've seen already being used by a few other brands, namely the CKLVX, the CK2V used a similar configuration, 1 plus 4 in that case BAs, and then 2 microplanars. But the one that actually has a configuration which is exactly the same as this is the EPZ, the P50. Anyway, let me just quickly introduce you to what I have here. And again, I've selected these particular IEMs to position above all, or that's the main idea, is to position the Horizon and not necessarily try and find here which is the best or which is the worst. Anyway, I've got here the Crescent from ZIIGAAT as well, 2+2, so completely different configuration, but it has a very similar tuning style. And this basically, I think you can say, is the ZIIGAAT house sound. Okay, I've got here the CKLVX, the CK2V. Next to that, I've got the Slivo SL224, which is a 2 dynamic drivers, 2 BAs and 4 microplanars. The 2 dynamic drivers here are not in an isobaric configuration. It's one driver dedicated to the bass and another driver dedicated to the mid bass, if you want to put it that way, and then the mids. The EPZ P50, which I was mentioning earlier, the 1+2+2, so exactly the same configuration as the Horizon. And on the end here, I've got the another ZIIGAAT, the XINHS 2+5 BA. This is isobaric configuration on the DDs, and on the Crescent as well, isobaric configuration. So different approaches, let's put it, to all of them. Although I think the most fair comparisons here should be done if sort of a positioning is what you want to maybe get out of what I'm going to say. The most fair comparisons here in terms of equal configurations will obviously be with the P50, with the Slivo, the 224, and with the CKLVX, the CK2V. Although keeping in mind again what I just mentioned, this has got 4 BAs, not 2, and this has got 2 dynamic drivers and 4 microplaners, so a little bit more drivers overall involved, but the whole tribrid, let's say, idea is being maintained here. In terms of, like I said, in terms of its physical appearance and build quality, I don't think it is necessary for me to carry on with that. Let's delve into what we want to know, which is, what does it sound like? Well, obviously, at $300+ there are expectations, and to cut or to straight away jump to the end of this, I would say that my expectations have been met, and they have been met because 2 of the IEMs, which previously I thought kind of were the ones that I liked the most from ZIIGAAT, although they've got, there's really not a product that I can say that I didn't enjoy from ZIIGAAT. All of their models have been extremely well tuned. They make sure that what they launch is always going to please a large group of people, so you can't really fault this one or that. Yes, there are slight adaptations in terms of how the ultimate sound is done and what they're trying to focus on or not, but ultimately they all are very good. And 2 of the IEMs from ZIIGAAT that I actually really enjoy are the Crescent and the XINHS, for different reasons. I like the fact that with such a simple configuration here, because effectively this is a 1+2 if you want to look at it. If you look at the 2 bass drivers, although they are in an isobaric configuration, but if you look at them as one single driver, this is a 1+2. Okay, if this, for that sort of configuration, or for that sort of simplicity, is an absolute beast of an IEM. It's got phenomenal bass, and actually has ultimately a tonality which does have certain touches of the Horizon. And the other one is the XINHS, which is very different in terms of the overall sound. You can very much differentiate the 2, although it's got two dynamic drivers also in an isobaric configuration. They have been purposely kind of, I wouldn't say subdued, it's not even the proper term, but they've been very much held back. And it's noticeable. You listen to it, and you go and listen to something like the Crescent, and you can pick up on very easily the difference between the 2 of them. This, in my opinion, as I was saying, this is without doubt, in my humble opinion, probably the best all-round IEM that ZIIGAAT has at the moment. Like I said in the beginning, before I made this statement, there are other IEMs that they have which are phenomenal. The Australia, for example, I still think it's a phenomenal IEM. The Odysseys, both of them, the second one maybe more polished in certain aspects here and there. The Odyssey is phenomenal IEM. Even the original Cinco Tres and the Dos Cinco had their magic. So there's really not an IEM that you can say, oh, okay, this is not well tuned or this is a disappointment or anything of the sort. No. But when you start contemplating all the aspects of the various models from ZIIGAAT, which I actually did go to all the trouble of doing that, I have to say that these three, for me at least, are the ones that best embody the whole sound that ZIIGAAT has made a case for itself. Yes, you could ask, oh, but what about the Luna? Yes, the Luna is a phenomenal IEM, especially when you consider it's an all BA IEM, but the Luna just didn't make sense for me to include here because it's just all BAs. So in terms of, let's say, hybrids or tribrid configurations, these three are, for me, the ones that fetch the slight little different nuanced styles of sound that ZIIGAAT has tried to give us with the various models that they've had. This one, the Crescent, that more, let's say, warmer, bassy sound. The Arcanis, that very, you would say, neutral kind of, it tries to give us a very neutral presentation with a bass that is never overemphasized or anything of the sort. And now here with the Horizon, I think that they've reached, or they've obtained, a nice compromise. Okay, it doesn't have the bass capabilities of the Crescent. I don't think it was trying to do that, but it does go and fetch a lot of the clarity that you had, and the neutrality that you basically had in terms of the vocal, the mid presentation of the Arcanis, and in my opinion, because of the usage of the microplaners, it takes it a step further. And it's, you know, it's not in one or two or three songs that you immediately pick up on it. You have to obviously start listening to a whole bunch of different things, but it doesn't take you long to also pick up on the extra amount of, and I'm trying to find a word here that will best embody what I'm trying to put forth. I would say you will very, I would say after 10-15 minutes I was able to see how good the Horizon was, and I think the best word for it is it's very elegant in the way that it does things. It gives the extension that the Arcanis is capable of doing in terms of the mids, upper mids and highs, but it does it with just that little extra little more detail, with that little extra more let's say smoothness, that on a BA or an all BA approach you run a fine line of it starting to have that BA timbre, which can sometimes spoils presentation, while over here they didn't have to push the BAs as much. In my opinion, they were able to keep the BAs, let's say, a little bit more restrained. And I think that the biggest difference that I was able to, I'm trying to just get here the graph. Yes, exactly, there we go. The biggest difference that made the mids and the upper mids and the highs, in my opinion, in the Horizon, to be that extra smoother and extra more detailed, but at the same time not cross that border of becoming maybe just a little bit too much, is the fact that the mids have the pinna gain, when it begins, it peaks at around 2.5k, and as opposed to the more forward approach that they used here on the ZIIGAAT. And when I take that 100 hertz point that I like using as a reference, on the Horizon, that 100 hertz point corresponds to about 2 kilohertz, while on the Arcanis it corresponds to about 1.4 kilohertz. And that extra forwardness, I think, is what, if you listen to them separately, both of them will have their magic, as I mentioned. That's otherwise the Arcanis wouldn't be here. But when you listen to both of them, to the same song back to back, at least myself, I started bending myself more towards the overall presentation that the Horizon has, in terms of that section of the spectrum, of the mids to the upper mids. Female vocals sounded more natural, instruments sounded more natural, not so pushed forward. And then the extension, and when I show you the graphs, you'll understand what I'm saying. Then the extension, and actually the graph after 2.5K is very similar between the two of them. But the extension, because it's been done, a lot of it, or the majority of it actually, is being done by microplaners as opposed to BAs. Yeah, it just has a different tonality, which at least, like I said, for me, I just was more in tune with the way that it was done here, as opposed to the Arcanis. And by no means, mind you, am I saying that the Arcanis is not doing it well. Again, I repeat, it's here for a specific reason. So that I think basically will already set the stage for you guys to understand what we're talking about here with regards to the Horizon. It's got a very well executed bass, very much the same sort of bass in overall, even I would say, intensity as the Arcanis. Okay, and so it's tuned in the same manner, the same overall level. Like I said, I think that the reason why it comes across that way is because of that extra forwardness that we have in the Arcanis in terms of the mids. It kind of makes the bass not sound as powerful as it is. On the other hand, here the bass benefits from that extra sparkle that the planars introduce, and just cleans up the bass, and it's very, very clean. It's a very clean, very precise bass. It resolves complex tracks very well. And it didn't matter whether I was listening to, let's say, Swept Away by Carol Duboc, or Twilight by Brian Simpson, or House of Groove by Eugene Groove, or La Belle Dame Sans Regrets, Chris Botti, or then I jumped to something completely different, and I went 360, or sorry, 180, no, 360, I would go back to the beginning. But I did a 180, and I went to Take Care by Howl's Boot, or I did Got It All by AK69, or Nervous Bliss by She Knows, which are completely different genres, or Back to Life even. Completely different genres, where again, the bass was at home. It did its thing. It was able to be clean, detailed, not run out of steam, and everything perfect. The transition into the mids is flawless. The transition then from the mids into the upper mids, again, flawless. The energy that's above that 2 kilohertz point, and when you see the graphs, you'll again see what I'm talking about. He is perfectly matched with what comes behind from the bass, so you don't, at least I didn't pick up on any aggressiveness. There's a slight dip there at 5 kilohertz, which also helps to happen that way. So there's no aggressiveness, no harshness, no amount of extra energy. Just very, very clean mids, very clean. Female vocals are phenomenal. Like I was saying, when I listen to things like Carol Duboc, Cecile Norby, let me see, Cecile Norby and Carol Duboc are the ones that I listen the most to. Lindsay Webster, let me see another one here, Sade as well. Phenomenal, really, really, really impressive. And even songs from and even male vocals like Pete Velasco, again, really, really good. It's got that cleanliness that is, at least to my ears, it's engaging. It's almost intoxicating in a nice manner, but it's never reaching that point where it becomes too much and you kind of want to lower the volume and change tracks or change the earphones or whatever. No, it is really, really, really good. Very, very, very nicely done. Technically, nice soundstage, loads of detailed retrieval, so micro and macro details, phenomenal in that aspect. Soundstage, like I said, good. Imaging, perfect, spot on there. I would say that in terms of technical abilities, what are the most impressive? I would say detailed retrieval actually is probably the most impressive characteristic. Then timbre and tonality. Even though I'm not going to say that maybe some of you might find that because of the way that the upper mids and treble are done, which for those which are still more capable in terms of hearing it at the in the upper registers, you might maybe find this to be overly intense. I never found that to be the case. I really honestly enjoyed the clean, detailed presentation that was given by the Horizon without it becoming too much. Okay. So let's comparing them to the other two ZIIGAAT propositions. Yeah, I would say that yes, this is the most, probably of the three, the one that will tick the most boxes. Some people found the Crescent to be a little bit overly bassy and without too much detail up top. Others found their CANHS to be overly neutral and at times even somewhat hollow. I didn't find that, because I understood what was trying to be obtained by either one of them. But in my opinion, honestly, these three, in terms of the hybrid IEMs that ZIIGAAT has done, I will probably say these are the three that I at present like the most. And again, let me make it perfectly, I'm not taking anything away from the likes of the Australia or the Arete or the Dos Cinco or the Cinco Tres or the Arcadia, nothing. Or the Odyssey. The Odyssey, again, very, very nice IEM. Honestly, very, very nice. I just feel that this does a little bit more. Whether or not it is enough to justify the extra money, that's something that only you guys can actually listen to it if you have the ability, and then decide for yourselves. As compared to then, let's say, these three, which also share this microplanar DD and BA approach, compared here to the CK2V. The CK2V obviously is $160, so it's half the price. The CK2V is very solid, without question, but you do notice that the CK2V, the way that it's tuned, especially when you go back and forth between the two of them, it does sound more colored. It does sound more pushed, especially in the way that the upper frequencies have been down. It does sound a little bit more overly emphasized. Okay, not to the point where it's badly done or anything of the sort, no, but it does sound a little bit more overly emphasized. And I think I wouldn't be fair saying that it becomes fatiguing because of that. No, it doesn't become fatiguing. I think it becomes less polished overall, and I would say you would probably need a little bit more care in choosing the source that you have this connected up to. So yes, like I said, there's a substantial difference in terms of price, but I would say that probably if you have the CK2V, this will be a more polished CK2V. Okay. So I'm not going to say for you not to go and sell your 2V and go buy this. No, I would say maybe try playing around with the EQ a little bit to lower the upper register slightly, and I think that you will be very pleased. I will give the CK2V one thing, which I've always liked on the CK2V. Although it's got that, let's say, colored tendency in the upper frequencies, the bass on the CK2V is very good. Very, very good. And I would say that the bass on the CK2V was more times to my pleasure as compared to the Odyssey, the Horizon, than the Horizon to the CK2V. But again, don't forget, this is more balanced out overall in its presentation. This is more colored and can almost sound V-shaped at times. Okay, so that's the CK2V. The Slivo SL224, also from Mayer Audio. I would say that this is probably the closest you can get to the sound of the Horizon, although it does offer or it is done in a slightly different configuration. It's a 224 configuration. It's got two DDs, like I mentioned, one doing the bass, the other one doing the mids, the mid bass, and then the early and the lower mids, and then it's got two BAs and then four microplanars. The 224, look, it's $220. When you see the graph, you'll understand. The 224 is very, very, very good. That's the reality. The only area on the 224 that I would say needs a little bit of attention and therefore will require you choosing your source a little bit better will be the upper mids and treble area in the, let's say, 2 to 5K section. It's a little bit more energetic than the Horizon, and that extra energy, depending on the source that you are using, can make that part sound just a little bit just a little bit too intense at times. It's not, I wouldn't even say that the scaling, it doesn't do it good. I know it does. I mean, the scaling on the Horizon is very good. The scaling on the Crescent is very good. The scaling on the Arcanis as well, I would say, is pretty decent. The scaling on the CK2V, good, except for the upper mids and treble can become a little bit too much at times. The scaling here on the 224 is really well done, except for that area there that with certain songs can sound just a little bit overly intense. But again, we have one thing here which is on the side of the 224, of the SL224, which is its price. It's $220, so it's $100 less than the Horizon. You know, it's a tough one. Trust me, it's a tough one. You're gonna have to really do your homework to see whether or not it's worthwhile going for the Horizon. And mind you, I'm not detracting anything from either one of these two IEMs, okay? And then finally, the EPZ, the P50. This one, yes, is the only one here that actually has an identical configuration to the 224, the Horizon, single DD, 2 BAs and 2 microplaners. It's an IEM that got mixed reviews. Some people liked it, some people disliked it. I actually went to the trouble of getting 2 units, okay, and I will say that between the 2 units there was a slight variance. The first unit that I got had a little bit less bass and was a little bit more intense in the upper mids and treble. This second unit here that I got the first unit had a little bit less bass but a little bit more intensity in the upper mids and treble. This second unit here, which is the one that I actually end up using more, has got a little bit more bass, and that upper register is a little bit lower. So the way that the balance is done is different. So I would suspect that those people that found maybe the EPZ P50 a little bit on the leaner side and a little bit overly emphasized in the mids and upper mids will probably, yes, say that this doesn't have a sound which is very much similar here to the Horizon, and that its sound is maybe overly pushed to the upper registers and can become a little bit too intense at times. If on the other hand you were one of those people that got a unit like this second unit here that I got, which is more a little bit more bassy, and the difference isn't a lot. It's noticeable, and obviously it becomes noticeable because then what you have in the upper registers is also less. So if you have a unit like this one, and again this is another IEM that will require some care with what source you're using, you will then be very pleasantly pleased and even say, wow, this actually is a seriously good IEM. And the reality is that these two IEMs are the ones that are the most similar to the Horizon. They have on their side the price point. We're talking $220, $210, so they are $100 less money than the Horizon is. You could say, oh, but Tony, it seems like there's some inconsistency in terms of the tuning. No, it's not a question of inconsistency, because this inconsistency, you find it all the time, and it has nothing to do with ZIIGAAT, with QEars, with EPZ, with this or that brand. Every single brand will have that. That's the first thing. Second thing is, it's not that the difference between the two of them, the 2 units of P50s that I have was dramatic. No, it wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to be noticeable, or at least for me to notice it, and for me to obviously prefer more this second unit than the first. Who knows, maybe I'll probably even retune the second one, which might not even be something difficult to do. But anyway, the reality is this: these 3 are the IEMs that have the closest sound. Okay, these 3 are the ones that actually sound the most like each other. Those 2, as I mentioned, the price is at in their side. The Horizon has overall, you know, if you consider the care that you must have with the sources that you use, or you know, this one is probably the one that ticks the most boxes. Okay, again, guys, because I'm saying this, I'm not saying now go get rid of your SL224 or you get rid of your P50. No, don't. Look, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that this does offer a sort of sound which is very much like those 2. compared to the P50, which is the one that has exactly the same configuration. It is a more polished overall sound. The difference is not huge, but it is a more polished overall sound compared to the SL224. Yes, the 224 does have a similar configuration, but you do have a second DD helping out there in the mids, and you do have then 4 microplaners. I would say that the mids there on the 224, perhaps just a little bit more organic, if you want to put it that way, but at the same time you do have that extra energy that at times just I don't know, it kind of, it's not that it's too much, but it just, the balance that they've struck here on the Horizon is really good. And you know, if you listen to them individually, you might not even be picking up on that issue of that extra energy that part of the spectrum has. And again, the same thing applies depending on how the IEM actually fits your ears. You might not even, that might not even be an issue. It might actually be something that you enjoy. Okay, myself, I was able to pick up on that let's say extra energy that was present in that part of the spectrum, and you know, it just made me find the Horizon overall the one that was the most times the more consistent in its performance. That's basically it. Anyway, guys, I think I've basically set the stage here for the Horizon. A solid IEM. Yes, I've heard all sorts of criticism with regards to ZIIGAAT. Oh, but they're launching IEMs left, right, and center, and all the time, and you never know what to buy, and this and that. And there is a certain amount of truth to that. But at the same time, we have to be realistic and honest. ZIIGAAT does launch a lot of IEMs, and it has launched a lot of IEMs this year. But the IEMs are good. The IEMs do play well, and they are trying to ultimately trying to cater for a wide scope of people by offering a kind of a signature sound from ZIIGAAT, which is very similar across all of the IEMs that they have, with just slight nuances, like I said, slight deviations. And when you take all of those things into consideration, I think the IEM that, you know, these three, I think, are the ones that capture the essence of ZIIGAAT as a whole, and the Horizon is probably the one that is able to kind of go and fetch the different abilities of all the IEMs that ZIIGAAT makes or has offered up to date, and give it in a package which you know is the usual ZIIGAAT package. Nice build, well accessorized, you know, it looks the part, and yes, fair enough, $300 is money, but it's not out of context with what is available from the competitors, which again, I repeat, I believe that they went and fetched their price point for this, looking at things like the Moondrop, the Dusk, and not probably taking into account these other offerings that we have here from CKLVX, from Slevo, and APZ P50, which are substantially lower. Had they, and this is just me now speculating, had they been able to price this at, let's say, $250 or $260, I think that it would not only come into conflict with a lot of the other IEMs that they do have. I mean, the Australia is $299, and pricing this below the Australia, you know, would go into conflict into it. Yes, the Australia does have really good bass. I think that's the main thing, and considering it's just a 1+4, it is a phenomenal IEM for 1+4 with really good extension up top and everything. But this does that same extension with a little bit extra amount of class and of detail, and just makes it a little bit better. So making or offering this at a lower price than the Australia would probably kill the sales of the Australia to a certain extent. Fair enough, the difference isn't that tremendous. It's $30 difference between the one and the other. But look, it's the reality is this: brands have to constantly, and ultimately we are the ones that are at fault, have to constantly be reinventing themselves in offering products, which I don't personally agree. I think fewer launches and really well designed is the way to go. But again, like I said earlier, ZIIGAAT in that aspect, we can't really criticize the fact that they launch a lot of IEMs, because all the IEMs they launch are well tuned, they are good. You know, you can't fault them in that aspect. You can't say, oh my god, they launched this IEM and it sounds like absolute nonsense. No, you can't. That's the reality. Anyway, let me just quickly show you the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Okay guys, so let's talk now graphs. Okay, this is the graph for the ZIIGAAT Horizon. As you can see, really nice bass, basically flat by 180 hertz, carries on through 1 kilohertz, it starts rising its peanut, peaks at about 2.5, and then that dip there at 5, which is nicely welcomed, and then a really great extension at past 10K. Obviously the microplanar is doing their thing. The 100 hertz point corresponds to 2 kilohertz, a nice amount of energy below that, completely controlling whatever excesses might happen here, which, as you can see by the graph, there's no excesses. And ultimately, this is the reality. It sounds really, really, really good. This is the left and right channel, so pretty decent channel balance there, nothing to be said. Now, going back and forth and comparing it, actually, you know what, I'm gonna compare it, well, no, let's compare it with the first comparison I'm going to do is straight away with the Slivo, the SL224. As you can see by the graph, I think it's self-explanatory, almost identical, okay? Just that extra energy that I mentioned to you in that area there of 2.5 to about 5 kilohertz, because then it's also got that dip. That extra energy, as I mentioned, you know, sometimes it's so hard to put certain things and to try and put forth ideas, because I don't want to get anyone misled or I don't want to mislead anybody. This extra energy at times just sounds, let's say, not as polished as I would have liked, especially when you consider that the SL224 is so good most of the time, you know, and there's like that 5% of times that it just and that's where things with like being careful with what source you choose will help eliminate that possibility, I would say. And I liked very much the SL224 with the Q15 from FiFIGO. I liked it with also with the with the APX 80. It sounded really, really good. I also enjoyed it obviously with my NX7 and U-key combination, which is something that I always use quite often. So, you know, choose your sources, and I think that won't really be an issue. Otherwise, both of them are, as you can see, very identical in their overall graph. They sound very, very similar. Very, very similar. The difference being, yeah, like I said, that the Horizon just sounds a little bit more polished. That's all. That's all. And again, the mileage will vary, because depending on how the IEM fits your ear, you might not even have that as an issue or as something that you pick up on. Okay, so that's the SL224. This is the CK2V. Yes, definitely the bass is more energetic and there's more bass. But then this section here just sounds overly energetic and kind of gives, let me just change the color here so you guys can actually see it better. Let me make it red so you guys can actually pick up on the differences here. This part of the spectrum here of the mids, of the upper mids, sorry, of the treble and then of the extension past 10K, it just sounds a little bit too intense at times. Also, don't forget we've got 4 BAs in this part of the spectrum here, not 2. So although the graph doesn't seem like it's overall the same, it does have more of a V-shaped intensity and V-shaped demeanor to its presentation. Obviously, it's $160. And when you consider that price, you can't really criticize it that much. I mean, it's half the price of the Horizon. It's not half the sound. That's for sure. The difference in sound is there, but it's a solid IEM, the CK2V. Okay, so that's the CK2V out of the way. The next one here that I'm going to show you is, let's get the XINHS out of the way. Okay, this is the XINHS. As you can see, that same sort of bass, but it's a two DDs, okay? Same sort of extension up top, but all coming from BAs, which coupled with this extra forwardness that it has here in the 1 to 2 kilohertz area, on its own, the XINHS is phenomenal. It plays really well, but it just, you notice a little bit more this, let's say, BA tonality here, and you don't get it on the Horizon, and that's why ultimately I just think that the Horizon is probably the more wiser choice You know, it's got less, let's say, less hardware, and has the same sound, and perhaps even more just polished and elegant than the Arcanis. But the Arcanis, for the configuration, nothing to be said. And like I said earlier as well, it's an IEM that I like. That's why I consider it to be part of this, let's say, group of 3 IEMs from ZIIGAAT, which I consider to be you know, the ones that are the references from them. Mind you, the Luna should also be included. I've just not mentioning the Luna because it's an all-BA IEM. Okay. This next one that I'm going to show you now is the Crescent. Let me actually as well change the color to red so you guys can see better. Okay, there we go. The Crescent, obviously, definitely more bass without question. It's a isobaric. This part of the spectrum, although it graphs very similarly and it's quite energetic, the fact that you got quite a bit of bass energy there from behind, it helps control whatever BA tonality or timbre that might hamper this part of the spectrum. And with songs where that bass is not noticeable, or that ability to be bassy is not as noticeable, you do notice that yes, the Crescent is a phenomenal, fantastic IEM, but the Horizon is the more polished, the more elegant in its ways of doing things. Okay. And then the P50, which is over here, and again, as you can see, the P50 is almost identical to the Horizon. Very similar. A little bit less energy up top, I would say, but very similar sort of bass. Very equal the sound, really. I mean, when I put the 3 of them, the Horizon in blue, in red the SL224 from Slevo, and then in black the P50. So P50, Slevo, and the Horizon, you can see that they are very similar. The biggest difference really is in this part of the spectrum here, the 2 to 5K. There's a slight little difference there in terms of the energy, and then up top the P50's just got a little bit less energy as well in terms of the overall extension. I would maybe even go as far as saying that this lack of extension up top is not playing against the P50, but actually making let's say that the overall coherence between the drivers be probably the most sensible out of the 3 IEMs. And I think that's already saying quite a bit, and that's it, guys. I think that's a solid way of showing you guys the ZIIGAAT Horizon. I know not everybody's going to probably agree with what I'm saying. This is my opinion, this is how I feel, and that's that. As always, like and subscribe. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask me and I'll do my best to answer as quickly as possible. You take care now. Bye bye.